Hey, you guys, we are here at the U.S. Naval Institute on the Naval Academy grounds with friend of the channel, and it's been way too long. It's been a year or so since we had Rear Admiral Mike Nasty Manazir on the channel. You guys remember we talked to Nasty 2 tailhooks ago, back when we were still doing tailhook at the Nugget, about the arc of your career, the flat spin you got in with Slammer. And then we had you come to the Moochland facility and demo how to land the Tomcat and DCS and also how to fight an Eagle. Yeah. But now we wanted to talk to him about part of his career that we haven't really focused on, which is the senior part of your career. Fans of the channel know we've talked to Slapshot some time ago about his Carrier CO tour, and we just talked with Chowda Hill aboard Ike about the same thing. So let's start by talking about your Carrier CO tour, starting with Nuke Power School. Was that hard for you or easy for you?
I didn't want to go to Nuke Power School. Had pretty good fit reps, not bad. Got squadron command and did okay. And I thought I could be an air wing commander. I thought I could be a CAG. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly. I wanted to go over to the beach. I wanted to continue flying. I used to fly the last year I was in the squadron. I was getting hints that they're going to ask me to go to Nuke Power School.
So how do you get those hints? Where do those start to emanate?
So the detailer, call you up and go, hey, so after your squadron tour, it's like, what are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm going to be a CAG, like this. And because I knew I had the grades from the Naval Academy to go Nuke, barely.
What was your major here?
Aerospace.
Okay. Yep.
But just because I thought I had to take aerospace to go flying. I mean, I was 2.7 test to test. I didn't remember anything out of here. Nothing. I get out of the squadron command, and they send me to N98, OBNAV N98, and I was the F-14 requirements officer. Captain, he was the CO of the Stennis at the time, calls me up at my little puka and says, hey, we're thinking about taking your name into the nuclear power tank in the selection board that's happening for command. And he says, what's your answer? And I go, no, I don't want to do it. He goes, okay. And I said, what happens now? And he goes, no, we'll take you, we won't, let's see, we'll note that you don't want to do it, but if you get called, you got to tell the 4-star yes. I'm like, okay, I don't want to do it. And so it comes out and I get the rag. I get VF 101 orders, not Nuke, but I'm going to go be the VF 101 CO at home in a drawer. I have a flight suit embroidered, Grim Reaper CO, Mike Manazir Nasty. I've never worn it. I was headed down to be the CO of VF 101 at Oceana.
Choice orders.
Oh, unbelievable. And I'm going, look at that. I obviously made the right decision. 1 year later, Trigger Kelly, we're going to screen all the bonus guys for Nuke. And I go, okay, what didn't you hear the first time? I don't want to do that. I'm going to the rag. Second week of the board in 1999, Timbo Keating calls me on the phone, leaves a message at home and goes, Nasty, you're a great American. We picked you for Nuke. Give me a call. Like,
So what was Timbo's job?
He was the president of the board.
Okay.
He was the president of the selection board.
And had he been a Nuke track kind of guy?
No. And he'll tell you, the biggest regret he had in his Navy career, and for the viewers, if you don't know Admiral Tim Keating, he ended up being PACOM, 4-star command, then Northcom, 4-star command, huge light attack naval aviator. He was,
he's a
legend. Legendary guy. Yeah. And he tells me, you get to do something I didn't get to do. Cool, sir. No. and so for 3 days, I'm getting beat on. Like, you're going to go Nuke. No, I'm not. You're going to Nuke. No, I'm not. Because you kind of say no then. And Wednesday morning, after a Monday night phone call, and I'm sitting there going, what do I do? What do I do? Oh my God, what do I do? And it's a small thing with mentorship. Some mentors give you a hug, they're helpful, they're supportive. Other mentors kick you in the ass through the door you're supposed to go through, right? So get in there and go to work. And that's what Admiral Nathman did to me. I was working for Admiral Nathman at the time. He was legendary for cutting people apart.
Call sign Black.
And I was working for him, and I got along okay with him because I'd push back, and I would tell him, no, sir, this is what we need to do for the F-14, right, at the time. And anyway, the EA comes up to my little puka and says, boss wants to see you. And I go, of course he does. And he was a Nuke. Admiral Nathan Black, he had Nimitz, then he had Nimitz Strike Group, and he's a Nuke. Very, 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 very smart. I go down there, I'm walking into the outer door, and there's another door to his office, and I tell the secretary, I'm here to see the Admiral, and he starts screaming at me, from the outer door walking. And by the time I got through the inner door and closed his office, I was nodding my head, yes, sir, I'll go Nuke. And he's just, wow. So I did not want to go. And I was actually mad going down, Nuke, and I was trying to, I don't belong here, just going through the school. Slapshot was my Nuke mate. And then Slapshot and I went up to Saratoga Springs in the summer of 2000 to go to Prototype. Prototype was better than Power School. You just got used to the suck, right? And getting out of school, and then being XO Carl Vinson, which is where I went, was good. Deep draft was epic, and then
what deep draft did you have?
I had Sacramento. It was a supply ship.
An oiler.
Yeah. In fact, Slapshot and I in Bremerton had sister ships. He had Camden, fast support ship, AOE 2. I had Sacramento, AOE 1, the leader in the class there, and so we were sister ship COs in our deep drafts. And so aerospace here, 2.7, test to test, they teach you everything in Nuke School. They take all of the Naval Academy 4 years of engineering courses, crush them together into 6 months, and you learn it. White sheet of paper, no true false, no gouge, there's no gouge, just white sheet of paper. Hey, why is there air? Go. And they were really, really hard tests, but I'm like, oh, okay, and so I got to learn all that stuff, and it was really powerful and rewarding to actually learn all that. I could prove F equals MA to whatever. Yes, sir, start, and down the thing and answer these oral boards, and so it was really, really hard, but it really was very rewarding to be able to succeed in Nuke School and then be qualified to go out and be the executive officer of a carrier and then to be the CEO of a carrier. The deep draft, of course, that's just plain fun. Fighter pilot towards a 600-foot ship. I was a pirate. I was just running
Plus
around.
an oiler, especially in this current event landscape that we're dealing with now with Bighorn either running aground or hitting something.
Yeah.
So there is no oiler associated with Lincoln Strike Group. So firsthand how important that is, and to not have one is a big problem.
Big deal. Yeah.
Because as fighter guys, we're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not the glory part of the business, but it's sure important.
Yeah, and I learned a lot driving that ship. And of course, for the viewers, why do you have a ship like that? Well, that's if you bump it into something. Then they'll go, well, thanks, Captain, for your time.
Yeah,
have a nice life. See you later.
CEO of a carrier.
The CEO of a carrier, you're going to drive a national asset. Thank you very much. And so succeeding in that, and I learned a lot. There is a continuing evaluation of the nuclear path and how long it takes. And so the officers that get to the end of being the captain of a carrier, you're right up against the 30-year point to make flag. And so the Navy, Naval Aviation, has invested so much in our carrier nukes, we'd like to have a chance at flag. And you're right up against there. So they're trying to shorten it and say, oh, we'll take out the deep draft. And boy, everybody said, no, don't do that. You learn so much in command of that ship when there's nobody looking over your shoulder. I learned a lot in that. And plus, as an oiler, unrepping all the time. So I run unrepped day, night, good conditions, bad conditions. I knew lots about unreps. So when it came time to do it with a carrier, piece of cake had been there.
So which carrier did you get?
Nimitz.
Okay, so remind us how much time passed from where you left your squadron CO tour.
Yep.
Remind us what squadron you had.
VF-31, Tomcatters.
So you had the Tomcatters.
Yep.
I just saw those guys down at the air show at Oceana. Parked right behind us when I interviewed CAG 3. From that time until you showed up on the brow as the CO, I would say PCO, but let's just say the CO of Nimitz, how much time had gone by?
Yeah, so I went to Nuke School in December of 1999. 3 weeks of stupid study before Christmas, and it began in earnest in January of 2000. Power School was 6 months. It all went through to 2001, July 2001, and I showed up as the XO of Carl Vinson in 2001. I went to the deep draft in January of 2003. After 9/11, I went and I was Carl Vinson's oiler, so I went right back on deployment. Finished that, went to AirPac from the middle of 04 until 06, selected for Nimitz in the summer or the fall of 06. I took command of Nimitz in March of 07.
Okay.
Finished command in August of 09. So December of 1999 to August of 2009. So what is it, 10 years?
Okay.
10 years.
That's a long time.
It's a long time.
Okay. So what Chowda pointed out is no other pipeline gives you the same number of opportunities to lead, to command, right? So in your case, you'd had command of a squadron, VF-31. You'd had command of a deep draft.
Yep.
And now you're the commanding officer of a carrier.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, what was the difference between commanding a fighter squadron and what you had in front of you when you took over Nimitz?
One of the big things I learned in command of my fighter squadron came from a question at the bottom of the U-shaped bar in Oceana. I'm sitting there with somebody, I can't remember who it was, right before I was going to be the commanding officer of VF-31, 97-ish. Why is morale important? I mean, honestly, it occurred to me, why is morale important? I just order them, right? I mean, I'm about to put the star over here, take the mantle of command. And by the way, everybody, when you're about to take command, all of a sudden you realize, holy crap, it's me.
Yeah, even after you've been the XO for a year and a half or so.
Correct.
Right?
And the same thing in the deep draft when I was XO Carl Vinson, Mike Skip Bowman, who was NR, they were thinking about again, can we do this deep draft thing? He came aboard Carl Vinson. We had already been on deployment. I'd been driving the ship at night a lot. Rick would give me the ship at night. We did combat ops. We did unreps, all this kind of stuff, right? And the Admiral came aboard NR and he said, Skipper, to Rick Wren, could the XO be the captain of the ship right now? And he goes, absolutely. He's great. He'd be the captain right now. But when I had the ship in the middle of the night and Rick's asleep, I knew he was right there. When I had the deep draft, there's nobody right there. It's like you turn around and, uh-oh, it's you. So when you have command, it's you. And you have to figure out how to lead the squadron with everybody else, realizing that you're the one with, the answer. And good leaders take in all of the inputs, and we talk about that in a little bit. But it's oh my gosh, it's me. So the weight of that star over here now on top of your name tag, where I'm the commanding officer, that's a very big weight. So I learned, hey, why is morale important? And then I thought about what I would do to take care of the troops in my squadron. So as I thought about that, I looked it up, Title 10 of the U.S. Code. It's like paragraph 8947 says the skipper is responsible for morale and welfare of the crew. There's a paragraph of Title 10, U.S. Code. It's a law. So I went out and got a name tag in VF-31, Mike Manazir, morale officer. Sacramento, Mike Manazir, morale officer. Nimitz, Mike Manazir, morale officer. And people go, what's that? Are you the fun boss or something? No, let me explain. And so it became this thing, right? By the way, up when I was a strike group commander, after this journey from my first command, realized way up here how much I didn't know as the commanding officer of my squadron. And I thought I knew everything. When I was in command of my squadron, I could do the ops officer's job, safety officer's job, the admin officer's job, the XO's job. I couldn't do it all myself. I mean, I knew how to do all that stuff. And so it helped me to lead those guys because I kind of knew how to do the job and what I wanted to do. And so I would back off, give them guidance. You guys got it. And I'd go be my skipper thing. But I didn't realize how much I didn't know at that time. So each successive command gave me something. When I got to Carl Vinson as the XO, I'll tell this story first. When I got off of the Carl Vinson and I'm doing the little gauntlet going out on my way to Sacramento, one of the CAD officers, E2D guy, or E2 guy, grabs me by the hand and goes, XO, quiz, skipper of a fighter squadron or XO of a carrier? I went, XO of a carrier. Better. More span of control. A guy named Ferks, who was a skipper of Nimitz, I think he was skipper at Nimitz. He said, we need 1,000 men to muster on a hangar bay. The XO calls in the brick, muster 1,000 on a hangar bay. If the captain needs 1,000 men to muster on a hangar bay, he calls the XO, muster 1,000 men. So you have a lot of span of control. I learned how to delegate because although in my fighter squadron I could do all of the jobs, I could not do a doctor and a dentist and AIMD. I had 18 department heads. And what you really learn as the XO of a carrier is how to delegate and lead with 18. But it took me about 3 weeks to figure this out. And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I don't know how to do this job. I mean, I've been on carriers, but I don't know how to run a carrier. And so down and in running a carrier, in about 3 weeks, I figured out two things. First, lead like I did in my fighter squadron, apply the same nasty, the same way that I led the squadron, 360 degrees, and delegate through 18 people, which meant trust and empower and tell them, look, Captain, the Admiral, are going to give us what we're going to go do. We'd run these strike ops meetings or whatever, these planning meetings, and go 18 objectives. I need to get the ship from here to here. You guys need to do your drills. We need to get our supplies. We got to do an unrep. We got to fly. We got to qualify. We got to participate in exercises. We'll figure all that out on the way. You guys are going to help me figure that out. So I learned how to delegate as an XO. In the deep draft, I learned risk management, big time. Like how to do operations as a carrier, as a support ship to the carrier. Be careful not to, get it into bad places. And there were about 3 times that I exceeded my own limits. And I got the ship back. You don't want to have to do that.
Like what? Almost ran aground or hit a pier or what?
Almost ran aground one time. Almost a collision. A couple times now. There's a great story I write about that. A very, very junior officer of the deck actually saved our ship because she said, "Captain, you need to come hard left right now." And I jumped up and looked and went, "Ha! Left full rudder." Because just that kind of stuff. That I didn't think about before. Wasn't exposed to it. Without getting into the detail. And then the, CO in Nimitz, best job in the galaxy. Best job in a chowder, slap shot. Anybody who's been a CO of a carrier, it is epic. And you just get to be the ship as the CO. And it's a wonderful experience in motivating and leading 5,000 people, managing flight ops. I loved it. I had a great time. What I can't figure out is why I wasn't overcome by stress and on my back all the time. The stress actually energized me. It's pretty funny. There's a little jab out there that says that you're only a CO of a carrier for 3 years because that's scientifically the longest a human being can go without sleep. I never had a full night's sleep in that tour.
Well, how much were you sleeping? Because I asked Frosty Snowden on Truman that question, CO of Truman, who is on deployment right now as we speak, and his answer was about 5 hours.
It's interrupted. It's always interrupted. So whether you're in port or whether you're at sea, it's extremely rare that you sleep through the night without getting some kind of a phone call. A person, the nuclear power plant, flight ops, not flight ops, you won't be asleep during flight ops. They got to call you for contact report. Anything inside of 5 miles, they got to call you. I tell him sometimes turn away so he doesn't get inside of 5 miles, so you don't have to call me. But if he does, you got to call me.
So were those your standing orders that you
Yes.
created, or were those sort of the standard standing orders?
There are standards that underpin all the standing orders, but they were my standing orders. And so they created opportunities. It's very rare. And I guess I should say I wasn't. There were a couple of nights I did sleep through the night. But it is, you go to bed at 1 or 2, you get up at 6. Automatically all the time. And you start into the ship's routine all the time. But even, ashore, at home, one of the 3,000 people assigned to the ship will have a conduct thing, or they'll get picked up by the cops, or one of the Nuke things will happen and they'll call you or something like that. So it's always, and you're always thinking about the ship. Always.
So where did you live? So Nimitz was home ported in Norfolk when you were the CO?
San Diego.
Oh, in San Diego.
Yeah.
Okay, so where were you guys living?
So we lived on Coronado, actually right on the base. When I worked for Airpac, we were out in the economy out there outside the fence, which was epic. And then we moved on base right before I took over Nimitz. Nimitz is on the eastern side, kind of facing San Diego. We lived on the western side, and the only thing blocking my view of the Pacific was the tees and the hole, the 15th and 16th, golf course there at Sea and Air, right? It's right down there. There's the Pacific Ocean. It was beautiful.
So how quickly could you get from your residence to the brow of Nimitz?
5 minutes.
Okay, so that's pretty damn convenient, right?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a funny story. When I was XO at Carl Vinson, we lived in Bremerton, and at Naval Station Bremerton in the Pac Northwest. The house we lived on was on a bluff where the houses were, and the ship was literally like straight down from me, about a 45-degree angle right there. It could almost look just straight down the flight deck. It's right there, in range of my brick, the radio.
Oh my gosh,
that's
even better.
I'd sit out on the porch smoking a cigar with my bourbon, and they would do something like they'd turn the wrong lights on or something. OD, XO. Command Duty Officer, XO. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Where can I meet you? I go, I'm not on the ship. Would you please take a look at the lights? You know, or they'd make an announcement and you could hear them.
You could hear it.
Oh, you could hear easily. You know, right up I mean, it was only a couple hundred yards away. It was just like right there. And so I would actually call them with the brick. But on
I'm sure
Nimitz,
they love that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
once the word got out.
Yeah, they kind of knew. Hey, he's right there. So then the standard kind of it's got to come up a little bit. But with Nimitz, we were all the way across the base, and so I had to drive around the base and go over there. But it was right on base.
Now at sea, you have 2 cabins, right?
Right. There's a display one down there. You know, the big import cabin. Everybody comes in.
Yeah, that's where I had my conversation with Chowda aboard Ike.
It's always set up with a theme for the sponsor of the ship or the namesake of the ship. And then there's a bedroom attached to it. And so we'd go to port. I'd sleep. It's beautiful. Sleep in there. It was really nice. But at sea, you have a little cabin right off the bridge. So you're
like
literally
J.O. stateroom sized.
Yeah, it's very small.
Okay.
Very, very small. It's
a rack and a desk.
Not much bigger here. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a rack and a desk and a locker and a head attached to it, like right here.
Okay.
So. Yep. So you could just literally get up and walk on the bridge 60 feet. You know.
So during your time as the skipper of Nimitz, what was the op tempo cycle? Did you do a deployment?
Yep.
How did that go?
I had a wonderful schedule on Nimitz. I took command March 7th or so of 2007. 3 weeks later, we deployed. Dropping bombs in Afghanistan, go through the Strait of Hormuz, I think 14 times, literally. Drop bombs in Iraq, come back through, drop bombs in Afghanistan, drop bombs in Iraq. Took the ship down to Chennai, India, because it was a national mission to go and say hi to the Indian government. President Bush wanted to convince them to go nuclear power on the civilian side, so we were kind of a messenger sort of thing. So it came out of the Indian Ocean during a monsoon. There's a big story about that. Went down into there, went back up into the Gulf. So it was a very, very kinetic deployment. In fact, when I was doing my training track for Nimitz, Admiral Zortman, who was Air Pac at the time, allowed me to go and get a Super Hornet qual. So I went to Lemoore, got Super Hornet qual, and I flew Super Hornets when I was CO in Nimitz, and then I was Strike Group, Dwight D. Eisenhower Strike Group commander. I got to fly Super Hornets off, my own ship, basically.
So how often did you get to do that?
Much as I wanted.
Right?
Yeah.
On deployment too?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because
Totally
that's rare
on
now,
deployment.
right? That's not something that guys get to do normally.
I don't know. It went back and forth for a while. We don't want the skipper flying, and then it was a retention thing. Yeah, we want him flying. I think guys are flying, and I think
because unlike Slapshot, because Slapshot talked about this when he was talking about not so much when he was carrier CO, because he was an RCOH for most of that,
right.
But when he was the Strike Group commander, he flew. But he's a Rio/Wizzo. You're a pilot, so you have to maintain currency.
Correct.
So was that a challenge?
No, because I get 3,000 hours in Tomcats, over 1,000 carrier landings, and so there's a lot of muscle memory there. So I just stay qual. I do a couple of traps and stay qual. Only daytime.
Okay, so you're not flying at night. That's the other thing.
So Zortman gives me this qual and says, you can go do that. Only flying in the daytime. Can I fly off the ship? Yeah, only flying in the daytime, not at night. Don't go over the beach. Do not go over the beach. And it was put out that way. Hey, carrier COs can fly. Day only. You manage the risk. The risk is yours to manage, especially when you're a pilot. So I stayed close to the ship. I did tanker hops mostly. Every once in a while, double SC. My favorite was a couple of yo-yos. I'd just run up and do a yo-yo and come back down, give the XO the ship. But the great thing is the squadrons, which were VFA 14 and VFA 41, were in the air wing. They'd bring an airplane down to North Island. Pilot would jump out. I'd jump in. Two-seater typically, so I could just jump in from VFA 41 and go out in the warning area, come back, do this, and do some approaches, and then give him back the airplane. And that would be my, go over to Miramar, do some bounces, and go around from there. Here's the really cool thing. Where we lived on North Island was those white houses by the Island Club at the approach end of 29. So when you fly into runway 29 in Coronado, you're flying down the Coronado beach, parallel to the beach, past Hotel Del off your right shoulder, and then you land on the runway right here. Well, we lived on the left-hand side of that runway, about 75 yards from the approach end. So when I get in the airplane over at base ops, taxi out and tell the tower, hey, request runway 29, say reasons, because they didn't want you to go by Point Loma. In fact, Top Gun Maverick, when he rides the motorcycle down again, that's that runway, and when the airplane goes like that, that's the turn at the end, right? Well, at the start of that is my house. And so I'd come out, I'd tell Kelly what time I was flying. I'd come out, we'd get on there, she'd walk out, depending on the time of day, either with a beer or a cup of coffee, wave when I staged the blowers and went down the runway.
Kelly being Mrs. Nasty.
Mrs. Nasty, yeah. So when I left Nimitz, I'm like, okay, this is never going to be better. I live on North Island. I fly off my own ship, flying Super Hornets. It was awesome. And then at sea, I'd get out there, I'd fit into the CQ, run down there, give the ship to the XO or the navigator or the OPSO, jump in, a couple of traps, and get qualled, daytime only. And then when we were out there, I'd just get on the schedule for a yo-yo tanker. I did a 2-seat airplane at sea, so an F. And then on the beach, I would fly a single-seat airplane. More risk on the, on the carrier. And here's the last thing I'll tell you about the airplane. I didn't realize how much. I got out of Tomcats in September 5th of 1998. Last flight in VF-31. Went to OpNav. Went to Nuke school. And I go, oh my gosh, 16 years of flying Tomcat, and it's gone. It's gone. And I didn't recognize, I never stopped to smell the roses. I didn't look around and go, this is really cool, because it's, there's like an office in there, right? It gets to be a office, and you rarely get the opportunity to go, wow, look at this. So when I got a chance to fly the Super Hornet, I would do things like, hey, sir, don't worry, we'll hot refuel it. No. I'll sit right here. I'll sit right here and just enjoy being in the cockpit. And it was like I got another life that I could enjoy, a do-over.
Yeah.
Now in a Super Hornet. And of course, we always talk about, what's the best ever and what's more fun and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was a real treat to be able to do that.
Let me ask you your greatest challenges in two categories. The first is operational. What was your greatest operational challenge during the time you were CO of Nimitz?
The greatest operational challenge was actually not related to the ship. It was related to making sure we were in the right place to be able to support strikes over Afghanistan and Iraq. And making sure that we were positioned to be in the right place. So, like I said, we would launch strikes into Afghanistan. The air wing would fly 400 miles up through the corridor in Pakistan and go and do their thing and then come back. And then we'd have to, get the time to go through the Strait of Hormuz to be able to meet the ATO, the air tasking order in the Gulf for the strikes in Iraq. And then we'd come back out and go over here and go over there. So my OPSO was just running hard the whole time, and having to figure out how to do these things. And then the running down from the Gulf with no escort, just us, down through the Indian Ocean, through the monsoon, southwest monsoon in July of 07, around the southern tip, back up the east coast of India into Chennai, and make that so we could do the national tasking to be in that port. Manage that, which was a story in and of itself, and then come back out and get back up on station again. It was literally using the capabilities of the carrier to get where we needed to be. And I had learned when I was XO of the carrier, we can do this as a team. We can figure this hard stuff out. In fact, as we came home from the 02 deployment, 01 to 02, the end of the 01 deployment leading into early 02, we had this big plan coming home. We were going to do a transit, Tiger cruise, all those kinds of fell apart, completely fell apart. Like at the last set, we had this whole plan worked out for the turnaround. Got more tasking, completely fell apart. Went, okay, collected everybody, and we put that plan back together. So I had confidence in the 18 department heads, me as the XO, to take the tasking from the captain and the admiral and put that together. So when I was CO of the Nimitz, there was no operational challenge that I was afraid we could not meet, because I had learned that the team and the expertise of the team actually knew enough to be able to plan, replan, plan again, all that kind of stuff. So the challenge was to make all that stuff happen.
This goes back to what you said about your XO tours. You learned how to delegate, right? Mm-hmm. So harness the talent of the crew you've been provided, which not everybody flicks that switch, right? I mean, we know some guys who try to do it all themselves, and either through ego or ignorance, and that never goes very well. And that's also not fun to work for folks like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've had that experience, and I was always wondering why the XOs and COs of the nukes I was on. I was mostly on nukes. I had one cruise on Ranger, 92, 93. The rest were nukes. could never understand where all the Nuke guys were angry all the time. I mean, they're just angry, frustrated, and they led with fear and intimidation and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, that's what we learned here from the nukes on the staff. Remember?
That's right. That's
It
right.
was the whole Rickover Mafia.
Yeah.
It's kept a lot of guys from going.
Yeah, from going. It's
nuke
like, I'm
power.
not doing that.
I remember that. Didn't they have a draft your year?
1980, the year before.
Okay.
I was an 81 guy.
Okay.
They sent me a letter, invited me to go interview. Thank you very much. No, I'm going to flight school. And so I had already a couple of tickles. That's why later on I kind of thought. But
the reputation, just so the audience knows, the reputation of nuke power was so bad when we were at school here that they had to have a draft
yes,
to force people to go nuke power in
That's
1980.
correct.
And I think at that point, I don't want to speak for the nuke power community in any way, but they realized maybe we need to like knock off this, man is inherently evil stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Which was a trickle down from Rickover.
There, I think so, and I learned a lot from that experience. I mean, the fighter pilot, shoot from the hip. You equip a fighter pilot with the ability to assess risk from a nuke power. You got a dangerous guy. Yeah, a really dangerous guy. So all the attack air people, are already like they're thinking 5 miles a minute. We're gonna do this, and now you put a nuke profile on them. You go, yeah, I think we can do that. And off you go. But we also, naval aviation, they picked, back in the days that you and I were going on ships, they picked people who weren't the number 1 and number 2 COs. The number 1 and number 2 COs, and you ask any of the detailer guys, the ones that are older, they went to be CAGs. A CAG was a valued naval aviation thing, and this nuclear ship stuff was,
Esoterica.
over there.
Yeah.
And so you basically had to, get a pretty good fit rep, middle of the pack, and be really smart. And so we ended up with leaders who were not known for their leadership abilities, and which is what we saw. And I think the thing to add is I think there was some fear that, and this comes up when you're thinking about delegating, you can be fearful that you will look like you're not capable of doing it yourself. That people will assess you and go, "Oh, he's delegating," because when actually it's the reverse. You get a better product from the team if you delegate and empower. And so now I see a bunch of, the carrier COs now, they are awesome. Every one of them, awesome.
That's my impression too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Chowda doing all his thing under a WES the entire time.
Yeah.
And being able to talk about morale, and he's focused right in the right place.
And Frosty's the same way. I've seen
all
both those guys at close
Repeat,
range.
Abraham Lincoln, and all those guys. They're really good. And they're focused on, they are smart enough, they know how to run the ship technically, and they're really good emotional leaders who are lead from a heart and not with a title, which is what I like to talk about. So they're really, really good. And I think that's what we were missing when you and I grew up, was that kind of covenant leadership where it's a human connection actually, and a joy of leadership rather than this load that seemed to be on their shoulders.
And I think that ebbs and flows with different eras of the Navy. I think the Vietnam Navy yielded some of those guys who were JOs during those years. Then when you and I were in our first squadrons, these guys are now our COs.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. I have my theories about what happened there. Okay, so that's the operational side.
Yep.
Let's talk about the personnel side.
Yep.
Now, either, obviously, as you've already hinted at, you had different problems when you were tied to the pier than you did at sea.
Mm-hmm.
So either of those different scenarios, officer or enlisted, what were some of your unexpected personnel challenges?
The biggest overall personnel challenge when you're either the XO of the carrier and deciding what to send up from executive officer instruction or XOI up to the CO for captain's mast, or you're the captain and you're managing discipline at non-judicial punishment proceedings, which is called the captain's mast. Really thinking about the morale and discipline of the crew. Every case that comes in front of you is an opportunity to demonstrate to the crew the standards that are required. It's not just a singular, this guy violated this piece of the UCMJ. It's managing that person see what it takes to put them in the right direction with their chain of command. And it's an act. Being at mast is an act as a CO. Before the accused would come in, chain of command's all lined up, said, okay, tell me about this. Of course, I'd see the file and what the charges were and all that kind of stuff. But I'd talk to him and go, tell me this. Hey, Skipper, look, the guy just needs a good talking to. He's a great sailor, doing this kind of stuff. He just keeps screwing up, and he does this or he does that. He doesn't think or, so just scare him a little bit, You want me to restrict him? Oh, yeah. A couple weeks of restriction. Make sure he knows what it's like to take away a privilege or something like that. Okay. Or guys would come in, they'd go, no, he needs to be kicked out of the Navy. He's unsalvageable. And I would say, well, this is his first time seeing me, so guess what? I'm not kicking him out today, but we'll see what's going to happen. And so the ability to have the actual decision change somebody's life. I'm going to bust you from, here he is taking the test to go up to be a second class, a first class sometimes. I took a chief to mast when I was a skipper of the Sacramento. I had to kick him out of the Navy for a fraternization thing, and we were like pool playing partners. It was very emotional. So figuring out what to do to uphold the Navy standard, but at the same time do the right thing for the crew and the individual was the biggest challenge. And knowing that you could do, as the skipper, it's yours. You sign what's going to happen with this guy. I took a young AO2 named Justin Ports to mast in 2007.
AO was an Ordy.
Yeah, an Ordy. Yep, ordnanceman. To mast in 2007 for fighting. And there were several, types of offenses that had to come to the captain. Fighting was one of them. A Liberty incident was one of them. Popping positive on a drug test is one of them. So there are certain things. Obviously, the big crimes, like robbery, that kind of thing. But fighting was one of them. And he was fighting with another sailor. Chain of command comes in. Captain, this guy is awesome. He's awesome. It was whatever. They gave me this reason for the fight. And I said, hey, look, I can't have it. So basically what I did, threw the entire book at him. I threw the whole library at him, then suspended it all. So it didn't show up on his record. He's a captain now.
Wow.
A captain.
Wow.
An Ordy captain. Writes me on a regular basis. Thank you for not trashing me at mast as a second class. So you have the ability to do the right thing. Conversely, and I learned this, Fozzie Miller was my second strike group commander when I was CO in Nimitz. And I had a case in front of me. It was an officer. And it actually involved an officer from another ship. This officer on my ship was a good officer, and it caused me to want to sort of waive the proceedings, and I'll just generalize it. I was basically going to find a way. My judgment was, give him a talking to, let him off. And the whole thing, the way that it worked out is it went up to the strike group commander to endorse my findings, this particular case. And he called me in his office. He said, Nasty, he goes, explain to me your reasons for this. I said, blah, 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 blah. And he said, you are upholding the standards of the Navy right now. Like in management now. You can't just be a good guy on your own. You got to realize there are larger Navy things. So that one case right there made me realize, and by the way, that this was in 2008. I'd been the skipper now for a year and a half, almost 2 years, a year and a half, going into 2008 and early 2009. And I realized when you're a senior leader, you now have to think a lot about the standards of the organization, even in and around the UCMJ and all that kind of stuff, but the standards of the organization, and think about, okay, I'm upholding the standards of big Navy while I'm maintaining morale and discipline on my ship while I'm trying as hard as I can to do the right thing for the sailor. And so Fozzie got me indexed to that, and I really had to think about that. And so from then on, I really thought about stuff. So now when I pick up flag out of Nimitz, and really management, as things came to me in front as a strike group commander, I applied that lens still allowed the leaders like Marcus Hitchcock, who was CO at Dwight D. Eisenhower when I was Strike Group Commander, and the other 06 leaders to lead, but I was able to come at it, allow them to lead, but able to come at it like Fozzie did with me. Here's some things you need to consider as you think about the morale and discipline of your crew. And so we would have these dialogues about, the right thing to do for the sailor.
That's a wonderful segue for the last phase of your career that we want to drill down on, which is Strike Group Commander. Mm-hmm. So you finish your CO tour on Nimitz. At what point did you find out you'd made flag rank? How long did that take?
August of 2009, I was relieved from Nimitz and given orders to go back and be deputy N98.
So back to the Pentagon.
Back to the Pentagon.
For your sins, you get to go back to the
And
Pentagon.
I tell people when they go to leave, like when I was 98 and my requirements officers would go back to the fleet, go to command, because a lot of guys go there, you'll be back. They put a little rubber band on the back of your belt loop and they yank you back. Oh yeah, trust me. So I'm a F-14 requirements officer in 1998 to 1999. I come back as the deputy 10 years later, same shop. And what's funny is, I sat down with all the requirements officers, and they started explaining what was going on with all the programs. And in 10 years, okay, got it, that's the same. It took less than an hour and a half for me to get totally up to speed, and I've been gone a decade.
Wow.
Pentagon.
That's kind of an indictment of our
it's
requirements
a very
process.
big indictment of the requirements and acquisition process. But I rolled back in, of course, then went to sea as Strike Group Commander. Later on, rolled back in as N98 and then fleet up to N9, and that was kind of. So I have 5 total Pentagon tours back and forth, but 4 of them been in requirements, kind of just walking up.
So if you want to make flag, and this is for the hard charging JOs out there, is that necessary or is it just what happened?
So some guys are very proud of the fact that in a 20, 26, 30-year career did not get to go to the Pentagon, did not have to go to the Pentagon. And I tell everybody, please go to the Pentagon. We need good operators there to help go through those long processes. The best we have, go to the Pentagon and do that penance, and they get selected for command. So I make flag, 1 star, and I go back and be the deputy N98. And now the wicket is to do well enough in the job in N98 as the deputy to be selected for a strike group. And so all of the 1-star flags, the carrier guys, they're hoping to get into the mix to be strike group commanders. That's the wicket to go through to make a 2nd star.
So is that your peer group, the other 1-stars
Yes.
in the Pentagon?
And no, the other 1-stars that are that are operators.
Okay.
That are operators.
Okay.
Anywhere. And so
Across the Navy?
yes.
Okay.
And so, captains, air wing commanders, ship COs, base COs, now they've got their 1-star jobs. And they're all, and typically our strike group commanders are line officers, right?
So what are the ratios very roughly? So this number of 06s to make this number of 1-star.
I know there's about 55 2-stars. And there's about double that 1-stars. And there's quadruple that captains.
So it gets neck
Very
down
steep.
fast.
Yeah,
is the point.
the pyramid thing is very apparent. For the operators that have the ability to lead strike groups, so definitely line officers. There have been a couple of submarine carrier strike group commanders, 1 or 2. Most of the carrier strike group commanders are either aviators or surface line officers. And so if you imagine the carrier aviators or operational either cruiser COs, surface guys, and aviators coming out, that's the competition to go lead one of our 12 total plus the 2 training, so I guess 14 carrier strike groups. And it is very thin. And as an operator, you need to go be a carrier strike group commander to then be in the tank for a 2nd star.
As we've done with your CO tour on Nimitz, and you've mentioned some of what Fozzie taught you and some other things that it was like prep school to be the strike group commander.
Yep.
But what did you learn in the job that you didn't realize you were deficit in or didn't expect to be a challenge you had at that
Actually, Mooch, I'll
rank?
tell you what, I was very comfortable as a leader, as striker commander. Very. That's when I realized I didn't know anything as a squadron CO. I mean, I was, wow. And so for those leaders out there who make squadron command, take in all the input, because I'll tell you what, there are so many things out there that you just don't realize you don't know yet. And so I took squadron command in 1997. I took strike group command in 2011. So I had that much leadership experience to be in the cauldron, to be thinking about this stuff the whole time. When I got to the strike group, it was like leadership was an experiment to me. I didn't think I had all the answers, but I was very comfortable leading through the other 06s. I let them do their jobs, and I was very, very comfortable. Because I'd been on so many deployments, really thought this was my last one, so I did deployment number 14 and 15 as a strike group commander. And I figured I'd kind of seen everything. These are the only two that I deployed from the East Coast. So Dwight D. Eisenhower home ported in Norfolk. We lived on Admiral's Row right there, so I could walk to the ship. Loved living there, and it was great. And we deployed east, going through the Atlantic, a first for me, through the Med, a first for me, through the ditch, a first for me.
That's the first time you went through the ditch is when you were the strike group commander. Okay.
All of my other deployments going west, including when I was CO 31, in the middle of my tour from XO to CO, home port changed from Miramar to Oceana, but continued to deploy west.
Okay.
So we'd fly 12 F-14s across country, get on the ship on the west coast, go west. So always through Westpac, down through Strait of Malacca, into the Indian Ocean, up into the AOR. This time, now we're coming around the other way. So Red Sea, Bab el-Mandeb, up and all this kind of stuff new, but I was completely comfortable. And I would have, like my intel staff, think about what could cause a conflict here. Is it, shortage of water? Tribal conflicts in the different places we're going to go that could cause us to have to, stay and then apply our operations or do some deterrence or something like that. So I could think really broadly because I had no worry whatsoever about what was going on in the pieces of the strike group itself. So it really honed that ability to empower, to take input and really trust the input because I trusted the person because of their expertise. Some people, you have to prove to them that you can be trusted before they will trust you. I tend to extend trust early and empower early because I think I get the best out of people that way. This validated that. I knew the qualifications of my officers. I knew how good they were. I knew I could challenge them with stuff. And I'd get a great result. Or I'd get a result, I'd go, okay, let's try this. And half of that, let's try this, was an experiment about whether I had the right lens and also whether they would come up with something different. And so that was really the fun part about being a strike group commander. It was totally fun. It's like I didn't have to work. I'd have my meetings. I'd go, okay, you guys got it. Execute the plan of the day. Go. I'd work out. Near the end, I was flying twice a day, 2 tankers a day. I was like, look, I'm flying too much. He goes, no, sir, we actually need you because the missions were really long. And then the other tactical thing that I learned as strike group commander, this came up the other day, was the management of rules of engagement for my aviators. Our rules of engagement over Afghanistan changed almost daily. Sam Paparo was my air wing commander for a while when I was strike group commander.
Now Indo-PACOM, he'll be on the channel at the end of this month.
Was the same as a CAG as he is now as a 4-star. The guy is amazing. He's just amazing. And so we had to make sure the air crew understood the rules of engagement and the reasons behind it. So that was a huge challenge, was helping to manage that, because I was the first flag in the chain. The other thing that was very interesting is communication. So I had, 5 ships with us in the Gulf. We had a ship up in the Baltic, reported to me. We had ships in maintenance in the United States, reported to me, still part of the strike group. And so communication to those crews, being able to touch the people that I could when they were in close enough, take a helicopter over, communicate via some kind of a link to the ship in the north, be able to maintain that communication with people. That was a real trick. And so as leaders think about how to communicate with dispersed forces, you really need to think about the modality of it, and how often, and how much delegation you give to leaders on scene and commanding officers and things like that. So that was another big challenge. Didn't come up very much, but I thought about how do I get this philosophy to people who aren't here with us? How do I get the philosophy to people who don't get to operate with us in the strike group here and still make sure they know they're a member of the strike group? Famously, Admiral Nimitz, when he was CINC-PAC after December 7th of 1941, he didn't do anything that anybody else on his staff could do. He stayed up here. He made decisions that only he could make. And he delegated to his entire staff You bring me the things that I need to make a decision for. So he stayed up high, and it allowed him to think broadly. But here's the warning for people. You don't delegate, give it to them, and then leave. You don't helicopter away and you can't find you. You don't detach, you just let them do their job. You got to be available to them when something comes up. Two things I talk about. There's only two requirements for a good leader. First one is to give guidance. Give guidance, continuously give guidance. Here's the guardrails. Here's why we're doing what we're going to do. And here's what we want to do, but not how. Let them do the how. Second one is remove barriers. They come to you and they go, hey boss, hey skipper, hey admiral, got this thing. It's in our way. That thing you want to do to get over there, that you've given us guidance, we got the guidance. Can't get past this. Turns out that policies, there can be exceptions to policy. Laws can be changed. Something in the way, some process or procedure. So what you do is, hey, roger that. You go attack that barrier. Because only you can do that at your level as the leader. You're the one that does it. Your value is to go break down that barrier so the team can do what you want them to do. So just two things. Give guidance, take down barriers. Even if you can't take the barrier down, they at least know you tried. And then you can help them figure out a way to get around it. And they'll love you for it. The worst thing you can do is go, oh yeah, no, I tried that like years ago. It never worked. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You're going to have to figure it out. Just call me if you need to. See ya.
So let's remind the audience that a lot of these stories are captured in your book, Learn How to Lead to Win.
Very proud of this book.
Well, you should be. It's fantastic. It's not just another leadership book.
So Mooch helped me, come aboard with a book, 33 stories, and it's this discussion we've been having, learning how to lead through 36 years of being in the Navy, learning how to follow at the academy, all the way to being a strike group commander, and learning how to lead through delegation and empowerment, 10,000 people through the 06s that you have. So 33 stories here with leadership lessons. In the back of this book, there are 10 maxims. And the maxims are kind of like the rules. And so what we did was, it's thin, it's an easy read. We took each maxim and built a chapter out of it with some reflections, like the first book has leadership lessons and then resources to each story. There's some stories in here and leadership lessons. And then if you want to use the maxims to teach, we built a study guide. And it's some activities and questions on, how you could take either yourself, if you want to deep dive here, or take a small or a large group through the maxims and lead in this manner. The whole theme here is leading from your heart, without a title, trusting, managing a human connection, or managing your leadership and followership through human connections to the point where you don't want to disappoint them and they don't want to disappoint you. If you look at organizations that are really, really high performing, there's a connection. There's a community that connects people. They know who the boss is. They know what your title is. But they want to follow you because you're a good person. You're a good human being. I want to be with that person. I want to go to work with that person. I want to go fly with that person. I'll go to war with that person. Walking through fire with that person comes from that human connection. And the biggest part of the human connection is they know that you have their back. They know you have their back. You demonstrate it, you talk about it, you model it, you're empathetic, you understand what makes them tick, you value them coming to work every day, who they are, what they believe in. You value their work itself, about their contributions. You celebrate their wins to the hills. You're screaming about the wins, and then when the losses come, you go, okay, that was my fault. I didn't train you good. Let's figure out how to do this. And so, you support them in everything they want to do, and that kind of human connection makes them want to go to work with you.
So, Rear Admiral Manazir, it's been too long since we've had you on the channel.
Mooch.
Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, sir. It's great to be here. Thanks, everybody.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. If you're not already a subscriber, become one so you don't miss anything going forward. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.